On your spray system, you have many different devices to stop your tips from dripping. This is a 10 psi diaphragm. This is a 5 psi diaphragm. So depending on pressure, that will stop the tip from dripping at a certain psi. You've got brass strainers, plastic. This is 50 mesh with a check ball in the back. This is going to stop the tip from dripping. This is actually just a check ball with no strainer. So if you're running high volume, some larger products, you actually don't have a strainer, but you do have a check ball to stop it from dripping. And lastly, if you buy some off-the-shelf strainers, some may not have the 5 psi check ball screen built into them, so this won't stop a tip from dripping. To make sure your sprayer is at optimum performance, you need to check your main filter at least once a week, depending on what type of water you're putting into your machine and what products you're spraying. It's very easy to lose the O-ring out of this strainer and dump this out on the ground, and this is the key to the machine being able to prime itself. You can see here we have a very dirty strainer, and it's going to make it hard for the pump to run. If your filter's mounted below your tank, you'll always want to close your valve so all the product doesn't come out of your tank before you remove it. Being cautious not to lose the O-ring. Clean and replace your screen. If you're spraying products like compost tea, pre-emergence, any wettable powders, and you're spraying at a higher volume, often guys will switch to a 16 mesh strainer instead of a 50 mesh strainer. This will allow a lot more product through the strainer. One issue you can have with this is clogging your tips up. So that's one thing to be aware of. We're always after a very clean, crisp shutoff of the spray nozzle. A few of the reasons why you would not get that is, number one, if you have your hose reel on. If you have your hose reel valve on, when you turn your pump on, you're going to get 40 pounds of pressure built up into the hose reel. When you turn your pump off, that hose reel is going to backfeed back through the system and continue to drizzle out of the tip until you get down to 5 psi or whatever size check ball screen you have in the machine. Another reason that your tips would not shut off quickly is if you have the regulator turned all the way in. You may do this because you're running a large nozzle or your pump isn't working correctly because you've got a dirty filter. If you turn your regulator in all the way, you have no agitation back into the tank. So when you shut your pump off, none of the liquid can return to the tank easily, so it has to go out through the nozzle. When it goes out through that nozzle, it's going to continue to drip until the pressure gets all the way down to 5 psi. If you have the regulator cracked just slightly when you turn the pump off, all the pressure can release back into the tank. Another thing to check for, if your right tip on your machine continues to drip and you're having trouble figuring out what it is, often you can take your Directo valve out and switch it to the other side and see if the problem follows this Directo valve. You can have debris underneath it, which would cause the tip to continue to drip because it's not shutting off easily. So an easy thing to do is switch your right with your left, move it over. Now we're going to find out if the problem followed this Directo valve, and if it ends up on our left side tip now as an issue, then we may have a bad gasket in this actual Directo valve. If this is the tip that continues to give us a problem that's dripping, one easy thing to diagnose whether it's the nozzle body, the tip, or the screen is you can take this tip off, move it to the other corner of your machine, see if the problem follows this tip and check ball screen. Install this on the other side. If it follows this tip and screen, we can easily verify that we've got a bad check ball screen. Okay. The other issue you could have is a bad diaphragm. This diaphragm shuts off at 5 psi as well. And if this diaphragm is a problem, we could move this to the other corner of the boom, see if it follows this diaphragm. If it does, then we may need to replace this.